into the infamous number 2 hole. One that had the collapsed lifters. $135. $135. $60. So number 1 is the lowest at 105. I'm going to test that one again. Number 2 is 135, 150 on number 3, 165 on number 4. Number 5 is 154 and 115 on number 6. So we have 2, number 1 and number 6, that are particularly low. I'm going to test number 1 again. I'm going to try that again. And 118. So that one did come back up. So from 105, we're now at 118. Okay, so like I said, I'm not an expert at this. This is sort of my first time through all of this. But what I've heard is that if you were to put some motor oil into the spark plug hole and then let some of that oil drain around the cylinder walls and coat it, that it sometimes will bring the pressure up. And the suggestion is if the pressure comes up, then what you have is the rings are bad, and the oil helps seal the rings. And if the pressure doesn't come up, then it could be the valves themselves. So let's do that next. Now, because I am new at this and have never done this, I don't know what the proper amount of oil is. So we're going to do a couple, 2-3 squirts. And it's the same thing, guys. If you have done this and you know this stuff, leave a comment. My first time, just be kind. I learn from every one of you. So I don't even know how long to let it sit in there. Okay, that made a difference. We went from 115 up to 150. So I guess it suggests that we have bad rings, or rings that are not completely sealed. $160. Tell me everything I did wrong, guys. Just do it kindly. It's your opportunity to be teachers. Alright, let me clean all this up, then we'll sit down and talk about what we've learned, and I'll tell you a little bit about what my plans were for the engine 47 years ago. Alright, let's talk. Let's talk about this V6 engine, this Dauntless, and my history with it and what I was sort of planning early on with it. Now, so my inspiration for this little Jeep came out of September 1969 Hot Rod magazine. I've had this magazine ever since then. It It has gone with me. It is tattered, it is torn, and I cherish this little magazine. Matter of fact, I cherish all of my old Hot Rod magazines. If any of you are old enough and remember Hot Rod magazine back in the 60s and the 70s when we actually talked about feature cars and we talked about hot rods and how to build hot rods, that was Hot Rod then. They had this little feature article on this little MB Jeep, or actually it was a GPW, and that Jeep was built by a guy named Lloyd White out of Portland, Oregon. It was a 1945 GPW, and from that moment in time, Lloyd White became my hero. I wanted to build a Jeep just like Lloyd. And a few years back, probably 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I actually found Lloyd, found out that he is still, or was still alive. I can't speak for Lloyd right now. And Lloyd, turns out, was a Willys MB expert, and he had written or compiled several books on the MB. And I emailed him, and I said, hey, are you the Lloyd White from the September 69 issue of Hot Rod magazine? And he wrote back and he said, yes, I am. So Lloyd and I then went on and had several email conversations about MBs, and Lloyd was able to tell me to the month what year my MB was built, and I thought that was fantastic information because I hadn't been able to find that anywhere else. And turns out Lloyd had been compiling serial numbers for years and years and years, and he was able to insert mine in that serial number range, and he came up with, I believe it was June or July. I've got that in the email. It was either June or July that my MB was built, and that's the one that's been in my family since 1949. Anyway, so Lloyd's little GPW was my inspiration because Lloyd didn't just build a GPW. Lloyd built a hot rod, and this thing was all chromed and painted and upholstered, and this thing had, what did he put in for an engine in this thing? He mounted a 671 GMC blower, 400 cubic inch, and I don't know what the engine was. Sure, if it says it here somewhere, I'm just missing it. Anyway, I was smitten. I needed to build one. Okay? And it was clear my old man wasn't going to let me strip the MB down and make the MV into Lloyd's Jeep. And it's not often you get to have conversations with your past heroes. Now, Lloyd has got to be in his mid-80s at this point, and I don't know if he's still alive, but he was very, very willing to talk to me and share with me what he knew, and I think that's what's special about the Jeep community in general. As a rule, we tend to be very sharing and giving individuals. Anyway, so that was the inspiration. So anyway, when I bought the CJ5, initially I just wanted to pound around town in it and take it off-road, and we did. And I had a lot of adventures, and we did a lot of things with that Jeep that probably should have destroyed it, but it didn't. We took it down ice roads and banged it against rocks, nearly flipped it over, and we had a lot of fun with that Jeep. I even got my old man, who was a old-time off-road Jeeper from the past, and the old man got in that Jeep, and he drove it like he'd been driving them all his life, which I'm sure he had. You know, I've told the story that Dad was a former World War II Marine, and Dad was a big woodsman, big outdoorsman, big hunter, and that's how the MB that we had gained its reputation, because Dad would take this thing off-road and he'd beat it through the woods. And when I bought mine, I was pretty much going to do the same thing, because back in the day I did a lot of hunting, and we used to take that CJ5 off-road, and we'd do the same thing. Anyway, so what I wanted to do was to build a hot rod Jeep. And I had no special purposes any more than Lloyd's was. It just was going to be a custom hot rod, and you wouldn't do much of anything with it. And I was okay with it back in the day. Today, I'm having thoughts. I'm wondering, what is it that I actually want to do with this CJ5? I've got a motor that technically, I suppose, if the block is not cracked from sitting around through multiple winters, I could probably just get this thing back up and running. And this was a strong running engine when I had the Jeep, or when the Jeep was on the road. It only had, like I said earlier in another video, it only had 45,000 miles on it. It was only a third of the way through its real service life, and it's proven to be that way right now, because the everything's working, and the lifters are working, and the compression is certainly within range. And let's talk about that range. So they don't give a specific compression ratio in any of the information that I've got. What they do say is that every cylinder needs to be within 20% of the other cylinder. Now, the best cylinders are in the 150 to 165 range, but even my lowest cylinder, which is 115, is still above the range of that 20%. And I think that came out to be, don't you love math? So 115 plus 20% is 138. So 138 is within range of the next lowest one, which is 135 PSI. And then I can take the 118, which was another lower one, plus 20% is 141. Even the two lower ones are within tolerance of the other cylinders. So what do? And this is where I ask, what's a dream worth? Dreams are special, and we all should have them, and we should all pursue them. Do I build the hot rod that I always wanted to build, or do I just get this little Dauntless up and running and put it back in the Jeep and focus more time on the other things that I want to do to the Jeep? I've got that fiberglass body. I'll tell you that story when we work on the body. Back when I bought the fiberglass body, you couldn't buy steel bodies, or at least I couldn't find a steel body back in '77, but they were making fiberglass bodies. So I bought a fiberglass body. Now the other thing I want to do is I want to put a 2 or 3 or 4 inch lift on it. I haven't decided that yet. Put on taller tires. I want to put disc brakes on it. So that's another conversion that I want to do. I've already Dad helped me shorten the steering column on this years ago. Dad was a machinist. Dad helped me do that. Now I know you can add in power steering now, and I'm not sure I want to do that because my dad's fingerprints are on that Jeep. My dad, who's passed away 3-4 years ago, he helped me shorten that. He used his skills as a machinist, and we shortened that column. And if I don't leave that shortened column in, then I feel like I'm not honoring him. So, and there's a lot of other things. I want to do some upholstery, and I've already told you that I'm going to reupholster some of the seats in the CJ2. And the idea is that my wife is going to help me do that, but I want to use that as practice for doing the upholstery in this little CJ5. So what do? Do I follow the dream? Or do I just take what little time I've got left? Now, guys, I'm 70 years old, and at some point, every one of us has to say, you know, what's the dream worth? At some point, you have to realize that there's not a lot of time in front of you anymore. So how do you best utilize that time? And I would like to get this thing back up and running before I die. You know, whether I leave it to somebody or just sell it or destroy it. I guess at this point it doesn't matter, but it is my dream, it is my vision. Do I modify this thing? Do I hot rod this engine? There's not a whole lot of hot rodding you can do to a low torque engine like this little V6. Back in the day, Kenny Bell, company's still around, but Kenny Bell was known for V6 modifications. Today, he's known for superchargers. But back in the day, Kenny Bell, the company worked on V6 engines, and I had all the paraphernalia from Kenny Bell to make modifications to this thing. But again, this is a torque monster. It was designed, this Dauntless was designed as a torque monster so that you got a lot of low-end torque, but you don't have a lot of high RPM horsepower. So I can't build a lot of horsepower out of this thing without sacrificing that low-end torque. If you guys think I'm wrong, leave a comment. I'm always, like I said, always willing to learn from everybody. Anyway, do I hot rod this Jeep motor? I'm going to have to check it either way and make sure that it's not cracked. I don't believe the block is cracked, but it's not worth putting all kinds of energy and money into something that you don't know if it's going to be good at the end of the day. I've always wanted to rebuild an engine. It's a life's bucket list kind of thing. This is my opportunity to bucket list, to build an engine. But is this the one? Is this the one to build? Is this the one to hot rod? Is this the one to learn on? So far, I've learned a lot, guys. I've enjoyed this experience immensely. Everything from pulling it to Jeep, from pulling it from the Jeep, to running it into my basement with my backhoe, to getting it over here and doing all this. Every bit of that experience has been a joy. And that's what any kind of thing that you do in life should be. It should be a joy. So, hot rod it or just get it up and running and put it back in the Jeep? Why don't you guys leave a comment? Let me know what you think. I'm going to ponder on this for a while because whatever I do, I need to make sure I'm not making a mistake and throwing bad money after even worse money, okay? Either way, building an engine is never going to be good money. It's always going to be money that you spend over or on a passion. Anyway, I'm going to put this on hold for a little bit. I need to think through this. I need to process this a little bit, think about what I've learned. I'm going to go back onto one of the other Jeeps next and start doing some of the projects I had over here. I wanted to get this far on this Dauntless because I wanted to see what I was facing. COVID. And I think I've learned a lot. And I think at this point, I just need to understand my options and understand what it is I think the future holds for me and this engine and this CJ5, which, by the way, I am a big fan of the old CJ5 Jeeps. I just am. I probably like the CJ5s even a little bit more than the CJ2 or the flat fenders. I love my flat fenders, don't get me wrong. I think they're marvelous, marvelous engineering executions, and they did what they were supposed to do. But by the time the CJ5 came around, they were starting to be styled, and there's probably more CJ5s built than any Jeep other model made. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys. I'm always interested in thoughts, and I'd appreciate all of that. I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate your support. I appreciate your kindness. I appreciate the fact that when you make comments, you have been kind and sharing and not being shitheads, because trust me, the world of YouTube is full of shitheads. I've been doing this YouTube thing for over 11 years on my other channel, 6 Round Studio, where I do firearms restorations. So I've seen both the good and the bad, and I appreciate here in the Jeep community, 99% of you guys have all been excellent and friendly and sharing. That's the end of the CJ5 series for a little bit. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. I've got my 1,000 subs. Now I just need those watch hours. So share this thing out. Help me get those watch hours up so YouTube can start paying me some money. And then I can think about how I'm going to spend that money on this thing. You know, guys, I appreciate you. I love you for being here. And I will see you in a future video doing something different. Bye, guys.
Won't be long till harvest comes. Morning breaks, welcome of the dawn. Daylight is calling, well